You are 26 years old, holding the comfortable, yet mistaken, belief that you grasp the intricacies of money simply because you maintain a savings account and diligently avoid credit card debt. Your role as a junior accountant at a mid-sized logistics firm in Ohio brings in a salary of $52,000 annually, and your financial planning is meticulously confined to a spreadsheet. You contribute a modest 3% to your 401k, primarily because the HR department advised it. At the end of each month, after rent and essential expenses, approximately $400 remains. This sum consistently finds its way into your savings account. You derive a quiet satisfaction from this routine, feeling a profound sense of responsibility and a comforting illusion of being financially ahead. Yet, unbeknownst to you, you are alarmingly behind. This particular trajectory of your life unfolds in a world where crucial financial rules were never explicitly shared. They were always present, laid out in plain sight, but articulated in a language you were never taught to decipher. Compound interest, for instance, remains an abstract concept, primarily because you experience it as a charge from the bank, never as a payment to you. The car you financed at a 7.9% interest rate will ultimately cost you an additional $4,200 beyond its sticker price by the time the loan is satisfied. Meanwhile, your savings account passively yields a meager 0.01% annually, utterly dwarfed by an inflation rate that steadily erodes at 3.4%. Every year you conscientiously save, you are, in essence, quietly relinquishing your purchasing power, all while mistakenly labeling this erosion as financial discipline. Your 401k sits in the default target date fund, its asset allocation entirely determined by someone else, or more accurately, by a machine calibrated for median, unremarkable outcomes. You are slated to retire at 67 with just enough to subsist, assuming an improbable string of good fortune. If the market consistently performs, if you remain healthy, and if you manage to avoid an unexpected layoff at 54. Crucially, you are not building genuine wealth. You are merely managing the controlled, gradual erosion of your financial standing, yet you call it responsibility. Your approach to managing your financial life mirrors that of a passenger on an airplane. You are present, securely belted in, and entirely reliant on complex systems you neither comprehend nor possess the authority to alter or influence. Across town, however, someone your age is charting a markedly different course. This individual is not inherently smarter, nor did they begin with greater inherent wealth. In fact, they may have started with fewer resources. But at some point, a book, a pivotal conversation, or a sudden moment of clarity provided them with information that fundamentally reshaped their perception of every dollar that flowed through their hands. They intuitively grasped the fundamental distinction between an asset and a liability. They understand that a car, despite its utility, is not an investment. They recognize that the interest rate on their debt represents the guaranteed return they are forfeiting elsewhere. And above all, they know that time is the most finite and precious resource in the realm of finance, and they are actively leveraging it. Then, an unforeseen event transpires in your life. It doesn't register as an opportunity. Instead, it feels distinctly like a looming problem. Your company announces a sweeping restructuring. 40 positions are slated for elimination. Yours, fortunately, survives the initial cut, but then the CFO contacts you directly, an unprecedented occurrence. He gravely informs you that the company's pension liability is underfunded by a staggering $23 million. The board of directors demands viable options within 90 days. He requires someone capable of modeling various scenarios. He then utters the phrase, capital restructuring, and probes your familiarity with the concept. You instinctively respond, yes. You are, in fact, entirely unfamiliar. That night, a frantic 4-hour session of reading commences, devouring everything you can find on unfunded pension obligations, liability-driven investing, and the critical differences between defined benefit and defined contribution plans. By the stroke of midnight, you fully grasp the immediate problem. By 2 a.m., a deeper, more troubling realization dawns. The company has, for years, been effectively borrowing against its employees' future retirements to finance its current operations. You calculate that the pension is on an irreversible path to collapse within 36 months without immediate, decisive intervention. You meticulously draft a 3-page memo, sending it off at 4 a.m. The CFO's call comes at 8:12 a.m. This moment, precisely, is where the two divergent versions of your life permanently separate. In the first version, unequipped with true financial acumen, your memo would have been couched in the cautious language of risk avoidance. You would flag the problem, copy compliance, and consider your task complete. An external consultant would then be brought in, spending 6 weeks to produce a report you could have written in 2 days, billing the company $180,000 for their efforts. Their recommendation? A conservative bond ladder and a modest increase in contributions. The immediate problem would be deemed managed, and you would not be involved further, quietly returning to the routine tasks of accounts receivable. You are 34 when the pension fund is, inevitably, quietly wound down anyway. You learn of its demise not through direct communication, but through an internal memo that you were conspicuously not copied on. In the second version, however, the version forged by those 8 months of relentless, self-directed learning, you articulate something entirely different. You don't just identify the problem, you model 3 distinct restructuring scenarios: a significant contribution increase, the issuance of pension obligation bonds, and a soft close to new entrants. You meticulously calculate the after-tax impact of each approach on the company's free cash flow, appending your detailed spreadsheet for verification. The CFO, recognizing the depth of the analysis, spends his entire weekend poring over your work. On Monday morning, he extends an invitation. Do you want to sit in on a call with the company's investment bank? You respond, yes. This time, you truly mean it. During the call, your newly honed insight instantly flags a discrepancy. The banker is citing a discount rate that subtly understates the liability by approximately $3 million. You jot down the figure on a notepad and subtly slide it across the table to the CFO. He, in turn, directly questions the banker about the discrepancy. The banker, visibly flustered but professional, adjusts the model on the fly. After the call concludes, the CFO turns to you, a new light in his eyes. I want you moved to a new reporting structure, he says. Just 2 weeks later, you are appointed Director of Corporate Finance Strategy. Your annual salary jumps to $94,000. And you are still only 26 years old. This rapid ascent is not the result of sheer luck. It is not an innate, undefinable talent. It is the tangible, compounding return on specific, actionable information acquired early and strategically applied. The ensuing 18 months serve as an intensive education, revealing that every system you operate within possesses 2 distinct layers: the visible mechanism and the actual mechanism. The visible mechanism is the polished narrative presented in meticulously crafted board decks. The actual mechanism, however, is what gets discussed and decided in the critical 40 minutes before those board decks are even circulated. You learn that capital doesn't inherently flow towards the most innovative or best ideas. It flows with an almost magnetic pull towards the people who already control existing capital. Your new job, you realize, is to always be strategically positioned close enough to influence those decisions before the options are formalized and set in stone. You initiate a bold move, reallocating $4 million of the pension portfolio from equities into a barbell strategy, a combination of short-duration treasuries and long-duration corporate bonds. This precise allocation strategy yields an impressive 8.2% return in a year when the broader S&P 500 only manages a 4.1% return. While no one celebrates loudly or openly, the CFO quietly takes note. The investment bank remembers your sharp intervention. 8 months later, a vice president named Castellano emails you. She's building a new team within the bank and discreetly asks if you are content in your current role. You are not. You joined the bank at 30, taking on the demanding role of vice president in the restructuring advisory group. The work is profoundly different from anything you've previously encountered. You are no longer managing a single company's balance sheet. You are advising multiple companies in severe distress, invariably arriving after the financial damage has been inflicted. Your task is to surgically determine what remains salvageable and what must, without sentimentality, be cut. You rapidly develop the ability to read a capital structure with the clinical precision of a surgeon examining an X-ray, swiftly, dispassionately, and with an immediate, almost intuitive grasp of where the critical fractures lie. You discover that most corporate failures stem not from bad products or incompetent management, but from poor capital structure decisions made during prosperous times, when the true cost of leverage felt abstract and inconsequential. At 31, you transition to a small private credit firm, actively managing $340 million in assets. The partners are seasoned distressed debt traders, forged in the crucible of the 2008 financial crisis. They impart a crucial lesson. The most important skill is not knowing when to deploy capital, but rather knowing when to steadfastly hold it. They demonstrate this by waiting 11 months without making a single new investment. This period of dry powder is not viewed as a failure of discipline or a missed opportunity. Instead, it is recognized as the essential precondition for truly transformative opportunities. Then, a regional bank unexpectedly fails. A distressed middle-market loan portfolio floods the market, priced at a deeply discounted 63 cents on the dollar. The firm acts with lightning speed, deploying $80 million within 30 days. The subsequent 4-year recovery on that investment ultimately yields a remarkable 140%. You are 34 when the fund, having grown exponentially, officially closes at an astonishing $1.1 billion. A single transaction under your purview can now easily exceed the entire annual budget of a small city. Your thinking has evolved far beyond monthly budgets. You now operate in the granular language of basis points and duration-weighted exposure. A position shifts 40 basis points against you on a $60 million exposure. You calmly calculate the precise hedge required. There is no trace of panic. Your decisions now directly impact companies' abilities to pay their workers, service their debt obligations, and ultimately survive the weight of their leverage. You do not, however, often think about those workers. This is the inevitable consequence of operating at such an altitude. Every pension collapse, every bank failure. These are often the predictable outcomes of informed decisions made by some, which others, lacking that information, simply could not contest. Financial literacy, you now understand, is deliberately not taught in most schools because an informed populace makes fundamentally different choices. Financial ignorance is not a neutral state. It is a profound structural advantage deliberately maintained by those already entrenched within the system. You grasp this reality with the clarity of someone who once played a complex game without ever knowing its rules. You were 30 before anyone bothered to explain spreads, duration risk, or the fundamental reason why rising yields negatively impact long-dated bonds. The wealthy, you now know, primarily hold assets. The working class, conversely, primarily holds wages. That single, profound difference compounds exponentially over 4 decades. The wealthy do not simply get richer by working harder. They own things, equity stakes, private credit instruments, royalty streams, that earn and grow while they sleep. These assets compound annually, while others are compelled to convert their precious time directly into dollars, a far less efficient mechanism for wealth creation. The growing chasm between these two systems is not a moral failing. It is purely mechanical, and crucially, it is entirely learnable. Now, at 38 years old, you sit on the investment committee of a $1.4 billion fund. Your decisions possess the power to move markets that you once only observed from the outside. You now directly influence credit availability across 3 distinct economic sectors. A remarkable 47 people return your calls within the hour. You, in turn, offer the same prompt courtesy to 6 carefully selected individuals. You have adversaries you will never personally meet, their positions quietly crushed through the sheer advantage of information alone. There is no malice involved, just pure, dispassionate math. Your power, however, is inherently fragile, perpetually dependent on market liquidity, the bedrock of counterparty trust, and the consistent tolerance of regulatory bodies. You vividly recall the version of yourself back in Ohio, contributing 3% to your 401k, meticulously saving $400 a month, and unknowingly falling further behind. The profound difference between those 2 versions of your life was not superior intelligence, not stronger character. and certainly not greater effort. It was information. Specific, learnable, and freely available knowledge that one version possessed and the other was never given. It all began with a single, unassuming moment of curiosity that, through consistent application, compounded into a force that irrevocably altered everything possible. Tomorrow, the fund faces a critical decision. A $180 million term loan is up for refinancing in a challenging, rising interest rate environment. The borrower is already financially stretched, and the original sponsors are quietly exploring their exit options. You have meticulously mapped out all three possible outcomes. You will render your decision before noon. That decision will carry profound, though unseen, consequences for 260 employees at a manufacturing facility in Tennessee who will never even know your name. 260 employees who will never know your name. The markets will open in just 6 hours. Somewhere below you right now, another operator is diligently working, reading everything they can find, pushing 4 hours past midnight, relentlessly building the knowledge base that will eventually propel them to this very level, or perhaps even beyond it. The seat you currently occupy is not a permanent fixture. Nothing within this intricate system is truly permanent. You are powerful, but not safe. You are influential, but ultimately replaceable. You are wealthy, but never truly free. The game, you understand, does not end. It merely accelerates. And the only question, the single question that has ever truly mattered, is whether you arrived knowing the rules, or whether you squandered your best years attempting to learn them far too late. The spreadsheet, you realize, was always accessible. The compound curve was always a fundamental truth. The rules were always there, encoded in the system. The language was always learnable. The system itself was always understandable. You simply needed someone, anyone, to hand you that very first piece of the puzzle. Somewhere, at this precise moment, the next operator is waking up. They are not yet aware of their immense capabilities. They will type something into a search bar. They will read one article, then another, and then the curve of their own journey will begin. Back in the committee room, you quietly close the folder. The decision is made. The exposure remains a tangible reality. The counterparty is undoubtedly watching. The regulators are certainly aware. Nothing, you know, ever truly resolves cleanly at this altitude. Another crisis, unseen and unnamed, is inexorably building somewhere within the vast financial system right now. You can almost feel its pressure in the spreads. You don't know where it will strike. You never do. Another operator waits patiently to rise. The seat you occupy has always been temporary. The knowledge that brought you here, that, and only that, was ever truly yours to possess. The markets open in 4 hours. The game does not end. It accelerates. And it all begins with a single, crucial piece of information.